politics, business, sports, arts, music. Mike and Marty on the feed. Mike and Marty. Mike and Marty on the feed.
Good morning, Bellows Falls and Rockingham, and welcome to the feed. It's Mike and Marty. Here we are. It's November 10th, 2021. Moving along toward Thanksgiving. Christmas lights are up.
Maybe at your house.
No, not at my house. But
I'm just excited that you remembered to turn your clock ahead.
I know.
So you are
I'm
turn
here
your clock
on
back,
time.
so you're here on time.
I was actually an hour early.
You were.
But
You were
I'm here. That's all that counts. So here we are, local events.
Local events. So just reminding everybody, we had Guy Payne on last week talking about the Sustainable Home Tour, but that's this Saturday, November 13th. It is a virtual tour, so if you want to join, you just go to SEON, SEON.info/home tour, and you can get the information about it. And one of the homes that is going to be toured is a local home right here in Bells Falls. It's Laurel Green and Steve Crofter's house.
Yeah.
Reminding everyone that Bells Falls Opera House is in full swing still with their classic movie night, and tonight is going to be Out of Africa, and that's sponsored by Susan McNeil and Sandra Whipple. And there's big news. Big news that I shared. Actually big news. So not only can you now get the triple up at the Bells Falls Opera House, you can get a, drumroll please, super up for $8. It's a large popcorn, large soda, and a candy.
I can't even imagine that.
I never get it
I
anyways.
get a triple up, and the bucket is like this big. How could that? How could
I don't
that
know.
be bigger?
Now it's a trough. You know those big plastic
maybe
storage bins. It's one of those.
Anyway, for those of us, for you not in the area, the triple up is like an icon of the Opera House because it's $5 for a drink, a huge thing of popcorn, and your pick of candy from the stand. All for $5. And now we have the super up.
I know.
People will come from miles around.
They'll come from miles.
At least
to get the
miles.
super up.
All right. The other local event that I wanted to talk about was the Parade of Lights. Mm-hmm. This year is going to be the first time Bellows Falls is doing a Parade of Lights. And it's going to be in conjunction with the Rotary Christmas movie, and I believe with the lighting of the Christmas tree in the new park. And so it's going to be December 11th at 5 p.m. We're really looking for entries. There's no entry fee, but if you have, you want to build a float, you could do that and put lights on it. If you want to put lights on your four-wheeler and drive it down, if you have a truck, put lights on that. But as many people as we can get, that's what we're striving for. And it's going to be a parade of lights starting at Henry Street and then going down through the square and ending at Walgreens.
So it's a pretty short parade. It's not the usual. I think a lot of people are thinking it's like the scoop de loop.
No, it's going to be.
Short through the square.
The idea going through the square because the square will be lit up and then the lights will come through and then they'll do the Christmas tree pretty much right away. It'll be a nice event. It's going to make the 11th a really nice thing. And it's going to be an annual event, but this is the first one.
Yep. And also, speaking of annual events, or what we hope are annual events, next Thursday night, the 18th, at 7:30 p.m. is the Bellows Follies. It's a Rotary benefit. It's also a benefit for Wild Goose Players. That's David Stern's new theater company. It's a Broadway cabaret and live auction. The nice thing is we've done scaled tickets, so you can get tickets for as low as $10. You can get $10, $20, $30, or $40 tickets. Obviously in different areas. Super, super easy to purchase the tickets. You just go to the BellowsFallsOperaHouse.com. They've got their new ticketing system set up. It's a great website. It's really easy. I checked it out yesterday to just see how easy it was. It's just click, 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 and it gets you through, and you know what seat you have. You can choose your seat.
And you had some homework from last week, I remember.
Oh, what was my homework? Oh, yes, it is. It is a weekend in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
And a weekend in Plum Island, and then I believe there's an art piece being auctioned too.
Wow, great.
So it isn't a long amount of auction items. It's mostly about the cabaret and the singing, but there's some nice auction items being auctioned off too. And again, it's benefits both Bells Falls Rotary and the Wild Goose Players. And the money that, just to maybe prompt people a little bit, the money that Bells Falls Rotary raises will be the money they use for the Christmas program. The Christmas program, last year we spent $5,000 in the community on Christmas gifts and food and just staples that people needed at the holidays for differing groups of folks. So we'd like to be able to do the same thing this year. So that's what that ticket money is going to go to.
Yeah, so be there. Or
So be there.
Yes. So what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy known as SeDS. Did I get that
SeDS.
right?
Yeah, I think so.
We have-
And our guests today are Sarah Lang and Jonathan Cooper. Hello. Sarah,
Hi.
do you want to sort of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the program and sort of, because you're coming up on a deadline for a pretty important thing right now, right? So if you could just
Sure, yeah.
fill us in.
Great. Hi, everyone. Sarah Lang. I work at the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself real quick, and then I can
Yeah, that'd be
answer
good.
some questions.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. I'd be glad to. So my name is Jonathan Cooper. I am the Community and Economic Development Specialist at the Bennington County Regional Commission. And for those of you in Bellows Falls, we're on the other side of the mountain in Bennington County, and our work there is sort of akin to what Sarah does at BDCC on economic development and municipal planning like the Wyndham Regional Commission. So Sarah, please take it away.
Great. So the deadline, November 30th, as you mentioned, is the deadline for organizations, nonprofits, municipalities, volunteer groups to submit their project to the SeDS project process. And we'll give some more detail on that. So first of all, the SeDS is a federally recognized strategic plan for your regional economy. We created this in 2019, and it covers the Southern Vermont zone, which is Bennington County, Wyndham County, and the town of Weston. This SeDS process was extremely public-driven. We had countless public meetings. We had, small group conversations with individuals that really helped outline what our 5-year plan for our economy should look like. Jonathan, do you want to just explain a little bit about what those meetings talked about and how we got to the document?
Sure. And those of you who are SeDS enthusiasts at home might recall that we had some meetings in Bellows Falls about 3 years ago. And so we came up in this public process with 5 sort of important objectives, 2 major goals. We wanted to strengthen business and support people. And that's sort of what this document asserts. And there's 5 ways that we sort of are looking at doing this. We need, as was defined through this public process, with the feedback that we got, the participation that we had, we needed to grow our population. We needed to strengthen our business infrastructure. We need to strengthen our physical infrastructure and our social infrastructure. And finally, we need to develop economic development capacity. So a lot of what we're doing with this public process is about ensuring that a document like a comprehensive economic development strategy doesn't just sit on the shelf and be, a snapshot of where things were at a certain point in time. What it's meant to be is sort of a guidebook, a roadmap, you might say, and it's meant to be relevant to all of the activities that are going on now all around Southern Vermont, and never more so than now coming out of the pandemic. So that's really what the SeDS is trying to accomplish, those sort of 5 objectives, and it lays out a number of concrete activities or sort of endeavors that would bring those objectives to bear. And what we're attempting to do is, and what we have been attempting to do every year since we got the SeDS approved, is kind of put out a call for projects to get a good sense of who's doing what differences are we seeing, like who's putting, their shoulder to the wheel, their nose to the grindstone, and what can we celebrate? Because we need to celebrate what we want more of. And part of the SeDS process really is a celebration of all of the efforts that have been made across our region.
So I was just going to say, coincidentally, I actually read quite a bit of that document yesterday, the 2019 document, because I'm in the process of trying to write a grant here for the health center, and it's loaded with information. And can you give a little history as to why this came about? What were the driving things with this Southern Vermont zone, and how come this focus on Southern Vermont? What are the problems that are inherent and that this is trying to address?
Sure, that's a great question, and I'm impressed that you made it mostly through that document. That's
well, I have to lie. I skimmed a lot of it and just pulled out what I needed for information. But it was a great document. It helped me. It gave me some.
Yes.
It gave me some stats for my grant application.
And I think the Camoin associates who put that together really tried to make it as sort of reader friendly as possible, so it is accessible to a bunch of different groups and types of people. Excuse me. So actually, the Windham region had a SeDS back in 2014. This is actually quite unusual because generally the Economic Development Administration, that federal entity that sort of oversees the SeDS process, they really like to see kind of bigger areas. You really don't see these strategies developed for a single county. As we know, Tropical Storm Irene and the closure of Vermont Yankee essentially put Windham County, Windham region in a special position to warrant putting together this 5-year plan, since we had seen sort of these two detrimental events that really sort of took our economy out at the knees. The EDA really actually invited us to do this process for the Windham region. Now, once that, it's a 5-year plan, so sort of towards the end of that, the EDA basically said, great, we want you to do another SeDS. However, we need you to expand the region that it covers. Jonathan, why don't you give a little history of the Southern Vermont zone?
Sure. So the state was well aware of, and the Windham region was well aware that as this sort of renewal period came up, it couldn't stay at the single county scale. Just with 44,000 people or what have you for Windham County, it was just, as Sarah said, a little too small for the EDA's comfort, but they had made an exception because of those extraordinary elements that Sarah referenced. So the thought was, okay, where does it go from here? It needs to expand. And so the state legislature, the General Assembly, felt like the best thing to do was to expand it across Bennington and Windham counties. That with that sort of expanded scope, we bumped up the numbers to closer to 75,000, 80,000 for the two counties, which is much more comfortable for the EDA. And it sort of demonstrated that there, in fact, is a real collaboration between the two elements. Prior to our articulation of this current SeDS, there was the Southern Vermont Zone Committee was formed to sort of establish a study of what's going on in these two counties. It's kind of a preface for what became the SeDS. That report was, that was put together at the governor's discretion. At that point, then Governor Shumlin, and the committee that put that together issued it in, I believe, 2016. The General Assembly earmarked a one-time, 1 year worth of funds to my employer, the Bennington County Regional Commission, for them to essentially hire someone to expand their ranks in an economic development direction. I was lucky enough to be offered that position. And with that, it became sort of a demonstration of the commitment that both organizations have to economic development across Southern Vermont. And so this sort of bigger picture or broader region is very much in line with what the EDA is looking for. And what it really has meant is that we've been speaking with, so much of life in our part of the country, our part of the world is lived at this very local scale with this extremely valuable heritage of local control, of, little villages, little towns that are making these decisions as a unit. And it's something that we've been working on and discussing, is how all of these units are kind of stitched together as part of a broader quilt, that we might say, that is what is happening in Newfane, what is happening in Bellows Falls, what is happening in Rupert, Manchester, Pownell, Guilford, Vernon. These are all relevant to one another. And it's something that's a little bit of a shift in thinking, because we all put so much into the towns and villages that we call home. That we also are, in talking to our employers, speaking with our school districts, we know that we really are bound together, both within our municipal borders and beyond.
But by uniting all these groups into all these small little entities into a group, we basically increase our I don't know if buying power is the right term, but our critical mass gets bigger and we get a better chance at maybe getting some of the projects funded, right? I think that's one of the things. If we're all pulling in the same direction and we all have sort of a similar goal, then the chances of us succeeding are better. And I think
that's absolutely the case, Mike. You're completely correct. And it's one of the most important parts of what this SeDS process creates is, there's already momentum out there and projects that are going on, but in part of our work is, in economic development, is assisting organizations that are, as they go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, helping them align what they're doing with, if they're looking for external funding from the federal government, from state grants, philanthropic components, what have you. The SeDS process and the project submission process really helps organizations articulate that very clearly, and it gives us some really good opportunities to engage with these projects and help orient them towards something bigger or help them realize the ambitions that they have.
So if someone were in the community and had an idea for a project but weren't particularly aware of what you were doing, can you give us some examples of projects that have been funded that or projects that you're sort of looking for, so that people who may have that in the back of their mind may say, I need to contact these people and see what's going on?
Yeah, Mike, that's a great idea. Excuse me. So something I do just want to make clear, because over the years, I think this hasn't necessarily been as clear as possible, but something I do want to state here is that there is no funding involved in this process. Really, the goal of submitting your project to the SeDS process is, there's a couple of reasons. So one, it lets organizations like ours know what's going on in your community and what projects you're working on. It's really hard for us to help direct you towards resources or funding opportunities if we don't know what you're doing. So honestly, on one hand, this list is used by these local, regional, and state organizations to understand what's happening in our communities, and then that makes it a lot easier for us to, let those project leads know, hey, here's some grants that are coming up. I don't know if you've heard of these, or have you talked to so-and-so at, this state agency, because they have a lot of experience in that realm. So on one hand, it's just letting everyone else know what's going on. And also there is a benefit when you are applying to federal grants and some state grants. There is often a question that asks if your project is aligned with the regional economy goals with that plan. And so if you check that box, it often gets you a couple extra points in that grant application. So again, there's no funding. However, it's sort of this midway step of, hey, everyone, this is happening in our community, in our region. Help us out. Let us know what resources are out there. And a lot of good has come from that. You had asked about some examples. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. I'll just read a couple from the 2021 list. For example, Bennington Recreation Center Head Start, Early Head Start addition. So that is a physical addition to this building. The Community Facilities Technical Assistance Program, which is run by BDCC. Developing new markets and infrastructure to support Vermont farms and food producers. That was submitted by Food Connects. DV Fiber, the CUD in the region, the North Barn, which is a project at the Retreat Farm. Gary Fox does a great job of submitting probably 5 to 8 projects for the town of Rockingham. So we always love having him submit his projects. Jonathan, are there any projects that stick out to you that you want to highlight?
Yes, there are, Sarah. Thank you for, and that's a really great sort of overview of some of these incredible projects that are coming through that are part of this SeDS process. I'll add in, for example, also in Bennington, just closer to home for where I am, the town had some real serious issues around lead in the service lines in drinking water. And MSK engineers and the town of Bennington, so an engineering firm in Bennington, the town itself, had come up with a pretty novel approach to determining just where those lead service lines are, using some old maps and sort of comparing them with some modern technology for GIS and spatial analysis. And they were able to secure essentially what is an $11 million in federal grant that sort of came through the state's permanent drinking water fund to replace all of those lead service line connections. They were able to get over 90-something% in a response rate for surveys, an outstanding project, one that is honestly like nationally significant. And so part of this process has been able to assist as they've thought about where do we go next, how do we develop this. Being able to be engaged with that is of real value to us, and we believe to that project as well. So as you may, I think everyone in Windham County is aware that DV Fiber was just awarded a $4.1 million grant from the Vermont Community Broadband Board to assist with pre-construction. So these sorts of important steps in procuring external dollars to support what's happening internally is something that we really value being a part of. And this project process is created so that we can partner with that in whatever way we can, but also, as I said earlier, so we can celebrate the things, what we want more of. And we know that there are some really good initiatives. We want to amplify them. We want to shine a light on them. And that's really what this process is all about.
Yes.
And would you say that with the current passage or the recent passage of the infrastructure bill and the pending passage of this next social infrastructure bill, do you think your input will be even more valuable in your coordination?
I'll jump on that. I believe that this is probably, there have never been more stories being told than there are right now with the passage of this federal funding, with the sort of almost unparalleled or unprecedented level of intervention, whether it's municipal funding for the American Rescue Plan Act or any other element, through Department of Children and Families, through some of our philanthropic endeavors. I mean, there are so many initiatives now that are getting a little bit of sort of wind in the sails. And we do foresee that sort of being this year, next year, the year after that, perhaps. A lot of this project-based approach, because now from a time when resources were very, very scarce, and we were all trying to make the best, do the best we could with scarce resources, things have shifted a little bit. And there are some opportunities for initiatives to really hit the ground running and gain some momentum right out of the gate.
Great. We have about 3 minutes left.
2 minutes now.
2 minutes left. Almost to 1 minute. But if you guys could go over your contact information again, and thank you for coming on. But that's the next step in this process.
I just wanted to say, just real quickly, to kind of clarify for people, because I think when people hear no funding, why bother? It's important, though, because you all help with capacity. Usually it's one person in this organization doing this and running, wearing many hats. So it gives you connections. It gives you someone to, like Sarah said, if they hear, if you're in the business, you hear of a grant, you can say, oh, I'm going to reach out to Marty because that might work for her. So that's it's all about the connections and staying in the loop. So if you have a project in mind, even if this isn't going to get you funding, it can get you maybe to funding.
It can get you to funding.
So
right.
sorry, I just wanted to kind of summarize for you.
That's spot on. That's spot on. And I think it's so hard to explain sort of what are the tangible benefits, because most of the benefits are intangible, and it is sort of that step in between, where you are now and potentially getting funding. And I guess 2 quick points I just want to make is that no project is too small. I know some of the projects we named sounded sort of like big and scary and like enormous, but no project is too small. And we also want projects that are not somebody ought a project. So we don't want projects submitted that is your idea for someone else to do. We want you to submit projects that you are doing, that your organization is doing, because those are going to be the most successful. And you can reach me at my email, which is slang@brattleborodevelopment.com. And Jonathan's is up there on the screen too, jcooper@bcrcvt.org. And you see that website. That is where you can go and find the forms to submit your projects. And we're happy to answer any questions. If you're confused by a question that's on the form, please just reach out. It's part of our job to make this as easy as possible. And we really look forward to seeing what comes in, because this is like a mini Christmas, in a way, because it's really cool to just be like, oh, I had no idea they were working on this project. That's awesome. So we're really looking forward to seeing what people submit.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Jonathan. I hope you'll come on again, maybe report back on some of the projects. And it's such an interesting topic. I really would like to have some follow-up. But that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you, Marty. I'm sorry I can't give you a project to do. That's what I was hoping for. Those are the best ones, when you can get someone else to do it. Anyway,
we would love to talk more about it. We could literally talk for hours on these topics. So we'd be happy to come back.
Great, thank you. And that's it for this week.
Bye, community.
Bye, community.
Thanks, everyone.
Local news, politics, business, sports, arts, music. Mike and Marty.